My phone wouldn't stop vibrating on the passenger seat. I didn't look at it. The screen lit up again and again, bright against the grey morning. A cold cup of Starbucks sat in the cup holder, untouched, the ice melted into a weak brown puddle. I was parked on the side of a rural road in Iowa, hands locked around the steering wheel, staring at a weathered mailbox with my last name taped to it in fading letters. I hadn't said that name out loud in years. A tear dropped and hit the center of the wheel, darkening the leather. I didn't know if I was about to knock on a door or turn the car around and disappear. The truth is, I almost didn't come. I was living in Des Moines then, in a one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon that smelled like acetone even through closed windows. The rent took more than half my paycheck. I worked at a logistics warehouse on the night shift, scanning boxes and pretending the beeping machines were a kind of company. I'd been there for 3 years, long enough to stop expecting promotions and start expecting nothing. I grew up in the system. 15 years in different orphanages and foster homes across 3 states will teach you how to pack light and speak carefully. You learn which questions not to ask. You learn how to smile when people tell you you're so strong, even when you're tired of being strong. By 18, I aged out with a duffel bag, a state-issued folder, and a vague promise that things would work out if I worked hard enough. They didn't tell me how quiet adulthood could be. Most nights, I ate microwaved dinners alone, scrolling through my phone without really reading anything. I watched other people build lives in small glowing rectangles. Engagements. Babies. New kitchens. I didn't want their lives, exactly. I just wanted proof that something solid could grow from nothing. The letter came on a Tuesday, mixed in with utility bills and a coupon flyer. It was thin, handwritten, and addressed to me using the last name I'd stopped using after high school. For a full minute, I just stared at it. My chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath without noticing. Inside was a short note from a county records office. They'd been reviewing old files, cleaning up incomplete cases. They'd found a match. A living relative. A grandmother. A name. An address. A farm. I read it 3 times, then folded it back into the envelope and shoved it in a drawer. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I'd made it this far without knowing where I came from. I told myself roots were overrated. But the nights got heavier after that. At work, the conveyor belts hummed and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I scanned boxes with addresses I'd never see. I imagined them landing on porches, inside homes where someone waited for them. On my breaks, I sat in my car and watched the sky change color over the parking lot, thinking about a woman somewhere who might have known my mother. Who might have held me once. I tried dating. It never lasted. I didn't know how to explain the blank spaces in my life without making the room feel awkward. People want clean stories. Mine had too many missing pages. The drawer started calling to me. One Sunday morning, after another night of no sleep, I pulled the letter out again. I looked up the address on my phone. The farm was 4 hours away, surrounded by fields and gravel roads. No nearby towns. No coffee shops. No easy exits. I took a breath and requested time off work. My manager nodded without asking why. I packed a small bag, the same way I always did. Old habits die hard. The drive felt longer than it was. The city faded into highways, then into 2-lane roads lined with cornfields that stretched forever. Radio stations dropped out one by one. I drove in silence, listening to the sound of my own thoughts, which I usually avoided. What if she didn't want to see me? What if this was a mistake? What if I found something I couldn't put back? When I finally turned onto the gravel road, my tires kicked up dust that hung in the air behind me. The farm came into view slowly. A white farmhouse with peeling paint. A red barn leaning slightly to one side. Wind moved through tall grass like a quiet breath. I parked by the mailbox and sat there, engine running. This was real. This wasn't a file or a form or a story someone told me to make me feel better. This was a place. A life that had gone on without me. I turned off the car. The silence rushed in. My phone buzzed again, probably work, probably nothing important. I didn't check it. I opened the door and stepped out onto the gravel, my shoes crunching too loudly in the quiet. Each step toward the house felt heavier than the last. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was just looking for the courage to knock. And I wasn't sure I had it yet. I stood on the porch longer than I meant to. The wood creaked under my weight, like it was announcing me before I was ready. I raised my hand to knock, then let it fall. My heart was beating hard enough that I wondered if someone inside could hear it. The door opened before I touched it. An older woman stood there, one hand still on the knob, the other holding a dish towel. She was shorter than I expected, her grey hair pulled back into a loose clip. She wore jeans and a faded sweatshirt with a local feed store logo on it. Her face wasn't shocked. It wasn't warm either. It was careful. "Yes," she said. For a second, no words came out. My mouth felt dry. I finally managed to say my first name. Then my last. The one on the mailbox. Her eyes dropped to the gravel, then back to my face. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She nodded once, slow and steady, like she'd been expecting this moment for a long time but didn't know when it would arrive. "I wondered if you'd come someday," she said. That was it. No hug. No dramatic pause. Just a statement, plain and honest. She stepped aside and held the door open. "You can come in if you want. Or not. That's up to you." I crossed the threshold feeling like I was stepping into someone else's life. The house smelled like coffee and something fried from earlier that morning. The furniture was old but clean. Family photos lined the walls, none of them including me. I noticed that right away and pretended not to. She motioned toward the kitchen table. "You hungry? I've got eggs. Toast." "I'm okay," I said automatically. Then I paused. "Actually, toast would be nice." She nodded again, like that answer made sense. She moved around the kitchen without rushing, setting bread into the toaster, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. I sat at the table and wrapped my hands around my knees. I didn't know where to look. Everything felt both unfamiliar and strangely ordinary. She slid the toast in front of me. No plate, just a paper towel underneath. Butter on the side. "I'm Margaret," she said, sitting across from me. "Your grandmother." Hearing the word out loud hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed and nodded. I didn't trust my voice. We ate in silence for a bit. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Outside, I could hear wind moving through the fields and something metal clanging softly, probably loose on the barn. "I got a letter," I finally said. "From the county." "I figured," she said. "They called me a few weeks ago. Asked if I was open to contact. And you said yes." She hesitated, just a little. I said I wouldn't say no. That stung, even though I understood it. This wasn't a reunion she'd planned. This was a door reopening after a long time shut. I didn't know if I should come, I admitted. I almost didn't. "I know," she said quietly. "I almost didn't answer when they called." We sat with that truth between us. It felt heavy but honest. I appreciated that more than forced comfort. After a while, she asked simple questions. Where I lived. What I did for work. If I liked it. I gave short answers. I didn't want to oversell my life or make it sound worse than it was. It was just life. Manageable, but thin. She told me about the farm. That she'd been running it alone since my grandfather passed. That most days were quiet. That she didn't mind the quiet as much as people thought she should. "I don't talk much," she said. "Never have." "That's okay," I said. "I'm not great at it either." Something shifted then. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. Later, she asked if I wanted to walk the property. I said yes, mostly because sitting still felt too intense. Outside, the sky had opened up into a wide, pale blue. The fields went on forever, broken only by fences and dirt paths worn smooth by years of use. As we walked, she told me small things. Which trees were oldest. Which fence posts needed replacing. Where the creek flooded in spring. None of it felt rehearsed. She wasn't telling me my history. She was telling me her present. I wanted to ask about my mother. The words sat heavy in my chest. I could feel them pressing up, demanding space. But I didn't say them. Not yet. I was afraid of what might come out if I did. We stopped near the barn. She leaned against the door, arms crossed. "You don't owe me anything," she said suddenly. "Not a visit. Not forgiveness. Not staying." I nodded, but something in me resisted that idea. Not because I felt obligated, but because for the first time in a long while, I felt seen without being examined. "I know," I said. "I just didn't want to wonder anymore." She studied my face, really looked at me then. Her expression softened, just a little. "That's fair," she said. "Wondering can wear a person down." We stood there in the open air, two people connected by blood but separated by years of silence. Nothing had been fixed. Nothing had been explained. But something small had happened. A door had opened, and it hadn't slammed shut. For now, that was enough. At first, it was just one night. Margaret offered the spare room like it was no big deal. Clean sheets, a lamp that hummed when you turned it on, a small dresser with one drawer that stuck. I told myself it was temporary. One night to rest before the drive back. But the morning came quietly. No alarms. No trucks backing up. Just light slipping through thin curtains and the sound of someone moving around the kitchen. I lay there longer than I should have, staring at the ceiling, feeling something unfamiliar settle into my chest. It wasn't comfort. It was something closer to permission. The days started stacking up. I helped where I could. Small things. Carrying feed bags. Fixing a loose hinge. Riding along in the truck when she went into town for supplies. We didn't talk much while we worked. When we did, it was about weather or prices or how the grocery store had rearranged the aisles again. Normal stuff. Safe stuff. At night, I scrolled through my phone in the spare room, watching emails from work pile up. My manager texted once, asking when I'd be back. I typed a reply and erased it 3 times before sending something vague. I didn't know how to explain that I was somewhere I didn't expect to be, feeling things I didn't have names for. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Margaret had gone into town alone. I stayed back, organizing tools in the barn. The air inside was thick with dust and oil. Sunlight cut through the open door in slanted lines. I found an old cardboard box shoved behind a shelf. It was marked in faded ink with my mother's name. My chest tightened. I told myself not to open it. I told myself it wasn't my place. That some doors, once opened, don't close cleanly. I opened it anyway. Inside were things that didn't look important to anyone else. A cracked hairbrush. A high school yearbook. A folded hospital bracelet. Photos curled at the edges. My mother at maybe 16, leaning against this same barn, smiling in a way that didn't look forced. She looked young. Scared, maybe. Real. At the bottom was a manila envelope. Inside were documents. Old custody forms. Notes from social workers. A letter, never sent. I sat down hard on the concrete floor. The letter was written in my grandmother's handwriting. It was addressed to my mother. It talked about fear. About choices made under pressure. About thinking distance would hurt less than watching someone struggle. It wasn't an apology exactly. It was an explanation written too late. I felt something crack open in me. Not anger. Something deeper. Grief for a version of life that almost happened. For conversations that never took place. For a child handed over not because she wasn't wanted, but because someone believed they were doing the least harmful thing. I didn't realize I was crying until my face felt wet and tight. I pressed my hands to my eyes and tried to breathe. The barn felt too big and too small at the same time. When Margaret came back, she found me sitting at the kitchen table, the box between us. She didn't ask how I found it. She didn't tell me to put it away. She sat down slowly, like she already knew what this moment was. "I wasn't brave," she said before I could speak. "I thought I was being practical. I told myself that over and over." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who had lived with that choice every day since. "I grew up thinking nobody wanted me," I said. My voice shook. "That's hard to undo." "I know," she said. Her eyes were wet but steady. And I can't fix that. I never could. That was the moment. The truth without padding. No one was going to give me back the years. No explanation was going to make it clean. This was the shape of it. Messy. Human. Final. Something in me wanted to run. To pack up and leave before this settled into something heavier. Another part of me was tired of running. I don't know what to do with this, I said, gesturing to the box. With any of it. You don't have to do anything today, she said. Or ever, if you don't want to. But that wasn't true. I knew it. Doing nothing was still a choice. And I was exhausted from avoiding choices. That night, I lay awake listening to the house settle around me. I thought about the apartment above the nail salon. About the warehouse lights. About a life that kept moving without asking me if I was okay. I also thought about the way Margaret had handed me coffee every morning without asking questions. About the quiet. About not feeling invisible for the first time in a long time. The hardest truth settled in slowly. Staying would be hard. Leaving would be hard. But only one of them gave me a chance to stop pretending I didn't care. I stared at the ceiling until morning, knowing something had shifted. Knowing that whatever came next, I couldn't go back to being untouched by this place. The decision didn't arrive all at once. There was no dramatic moment where I sat up in bed and suddenly knew what to do. It came in pieces, stitched together over a few ordinary days. The first piece was my phone call to work. I stood outside by the barn, phone pressed to my ear, watching a line of clouds move slowly across the sky. I told my manager I needed to take a leave. I didn't give details. I didn't apologize. He was quiet for a moment, then said he understood. When the call ended, I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From relief. The second piece was smaller. Margaret asked if I wanted to go with her to the feed store. In the truck, she reached over and turned the radio on low. Country music, old stuff. She didn't ask if I liked it. She just shared it. I watched her hands on the steering wheel, steady and worn. I thought about how many miles those hands had driven alone. We still didn't talk much about the past. Sometimes I wanted to. Sometimes I didn't. What mattered was that we were honest when it came up and quiet when it didn't. There was room for both. I started helping more around the farm. Not because I felt I owed her, but because it felt good to be useful in a way that wasn't measured by a scanner or a schedule. Fixing fences. Cleaning out the barn. Learning how to tell when rain was coming by the way the air shifted. The work was tiring, but it made sense. You did something, and you saw the result. One evening, we sat on the porch as the sun went down. The fields glowed soft gold, then faded into blue. Margaret handed me a glass of iced tea. Our shoulders didn't touch, but they were close enough to feel the warmth. "I'm not asking you to stay," she said. "I need you to know that." "I know," I said. "But I'd like it if you did," she added. "Even for a while." I thought about the word while. How temporary it sounded. How safe. I also thought about how much of my life had been temporary already. "I don't know what staying looks like," I said. "That's okay," she said. "Neither do I." That was the small win. Not certainty. Not closure. Just space to try. I updated my address for the first time in years. I found part-time work in town, helping at a hardware store. The owner didn't care about my resume gaps. He cared that I showed up on time and didn't mind getting my hands dirty. People started recognizing me when I came in, asking how the farm was doing, remembering my name. At night, I slept better. Not perfectly. Some nights the old thoughts came back. But they didn't swallow me whole anymore. I had somewhere to place them. One afternoon, I took the box from the barn back out and went through it again. Slower this time. I didn't feel the same sharp pain. It still hurt, but it was softer around the edges. I put the letter back. I kept the photos. I wasn't fixing the past. I was learning how to carry it without letting it decide everything. On my last day before the story would have ended if this were a cleaner life, nothing dramatic happened. Margaret made eggs. I washed the dishes. The sky was clear. The mail came and went. It was ordinary in the best way. That night, I stood by the mailbox again. This time, I didn't cry. I thought about how much time I'd spent believing I came from nothing. How heavy that belief had been. How easy it was to mistake silence for rejection. Family, I realized, wasn't about perfect choices or clean timelines. Sometimes it was about showing up late and staying anyway. I don't know how long I'll be here. I don't know what comes next. But for the first time, my life doesn't feel like it's floating without an anchor. Some roots grow underground for a long time before you ever see them. If you've ever gone looking for where you came from, or if you're still wondering whether it's worth it, I hope this reminds you that it's okay to move slowly. It's okay to take the small win. And it's okay to build something real, even if it starts later than you planned.